And good evening, everyone. I'm Hunter Ohanian. I'm the director of the Stonewall National Museum and Archives here in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. And we're very happy to have all of you here. And welcome to our most recent exhibition called Life Letters. And this is an exhibition that's coming directly out of our archives. And I want to start out with a shout out to Stephen Nowak, who's done a great job in helping me put this show together. He did really the yeoman's work of the research here. And Stephen, thank you for all the help that you did, because it's really been very valuable to all of us here. For those of you who don't know us, we're located here in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. We've been around since 1973, and we have one of the largest LGBTQ libraries in the world. You can probably see it back over there. And then in addition, in our archives, we have 6 million pages of materials, 2,700 linear feet, mostly from the last quarter of the 20th century to the present day. And so what we're doing with these exhibitions, they are done here live here in Fort Lauderdale. And if you are here, we're open to the general public Monday through Friday from 11 to 5 every day. If you need to reach out to us and want a special appointment, we'll do the best that we can to do that. But the lending library is open, and we also have opportunities for people to research in the archives as well. We're also, it's very easy for us to take donations in at this time. Just to sort of turn the camera around right here, a lot of people have been cleaning out their closets and their attics and stuff, and you can see we have a lot of things which are here to be processed. And it really is just, it's a great way of being able to see so much gay history, and happy that it's all being preserved. So the exhibition I want to talk to you about, this will be up for 2 months. We have another exhibition that we opened about a month ago called Elected Sisters, and that was about pioneering bi, trans, and lesbian women who were the first to run for public office as openly out women, LGBTQ women. And that's all available on our website at stonewall-museum.org, or you can come in here to the library and to be able to see it. So Life Letters, this again, as I said, is something which is coming out of our archive. And when I started thinking about the show in the beginning, I was thinking about love letters. But then as I started looking at them more, I started thinking about the idea that yes, there is love in all of these, but it really is about the letters of relationships that relate to LGBTQ people's lives. And so we broadened it a little bit to talk about those actual relationships. So we have 10 people who are in the show, and I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start over here. It's going to be difficult for you to actually read the letters themselves. So allow me to describe some of them, and then know that everything that I'm saying and describing here will be available online when we put this up. But give us until about next week to get all this up, because we just got the show hung now. But you'll be able to see the actual letters online, and then all of the wall text that I'm going to point out here will be available too. So the first one I want to start to are these two objects here that you see in front of you. And these were sent by Brian Pardor. And while we do have a picture of his face, which you can't see very well, but it's right there, we actually know very little about Brian. We know that he was born in December 1972, and by the age of 22, he was incarcerated for an unknown crime, and he served time in the Okeechobee County Correctional Institute in Okeechobee, Florida, here in Florida. But we do know one thing about him besides his arrest, is that he was very much in love with someone by the name of Jerry Bauer. Jerry lived in Coconut Creek, Florida. He attended Broward Community Junior College, and in 1981, he even worked as a ballroom dancer and instructor at the Star Ballroom on East Atlantic Boulevard in Pompano Beach. From behind bars, between 1994 and 2000, Pardor sent Bauer scores of love letters, often accompanied by original artwork. And here you can see a collage that he's made, it says, "To you, my love, with love from Brian." And so it's a bouquet, which is another piece, and then he has put those two items in there. This collage came with this letter and this photo of him. They were actually close, although we don't know how close the two of them were. But in the files, we can actually see that at one point in time, Bauer brought Parter a silk tie, a shirt, dress pants, and a jacket to wear at a particular court appearance. So this is just one of the many letters that he wrote to his partner from jail. And he says, "Only time stands between us. Tomorrow brings us a little closer. In each passing day, I too miss you more and more. Only time together that day will make up for all the without you. The kiss, the knowing, once again, my love, we'll love in the future. Only time can reflect something old into something new. In each passing day, a look at love is beautiful. With all my love, Brian." Very touching letter. Next, let's go to somebody who I think most of you have probably heard of. And this is from Tennessee Williams. And this is, again, when you come see it, you'll see that this is written on a note card from a Marriott hotel. And if you see, there's a little gray part right in the middle of that is the Marriott logo. In 1972, Tennessee Williams began a multi-year relationship with Robert Campbell, who was 36 years his junior. Campbell served time in Vietnam and also aspired to be a writer. Like Williams, Campbell had a problem with substance abuse, and often the relationship between the two men was tumultuous. A year later, Williams explained his relationship with Carol in a letter to Maria St. Just. "You know, he's kept alternating between great sweetness to me, mostly into New York, where I have the protection of Billy and others, and downright beastliness of behavior, which makes it all but impossible for me to go out with him in public. Yesterday, we were invited to lunch at Zeffirelli's, and he ignored the whole company, just lay there chain smoking. Franco whispered to me, 'Maria is right.' The trouble is that he plays on my sympathies and on my acute loneliness. You really don't seem to know how awful it is to be alone at my age and gay." Now on display, what you see here in this letter, written on the Marriott Hotel stationery by Tennessee Williams, the following year at age 67, to a friend named Jim. And we've researched it and we've not discovered who Jim is. In the letter, we learn of his love of Key West and his time spent painting and the problems that Robert Campbell were still causing. Almost casually, Williams confesses to Jim that Carol would require hospitalization due to drug and alcohol abuse. In the letter, we read, "Dear Jim, I hope this reaches you. It was lovely finding you, and still again after such a long time. When I get back from London in a few weeks, I hope you can assist me in Key West. Robert appears to be approaching a serious crack-up that will require hospitalization due to drug excesses, etc. Think you'll love the Keys. I'm painting a lot in spare time. Just sold a new oil for $1,000. We can run a little gallery. Best to all the family. Love, 10. The following year, Williams and Carol severed their romantic relationship. However, Williams agreed to pay him $150 a month to stay away. Despite the separation, Williams and Carol had remained friends until Williams' death in 1983. If we look down here, you see two letters, and actually one is a letter and another one is a note. Here is the letter down here, and here's a note which comes after it. And for me, what this letter really spoke to was the fact that many men in the 1950s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and even somewhat afterwards, even though they were gay, and true with lesbians as well too, they ended up getting married to an opposite sex in a more typical relationship, but they found it to be impossible to live with. So with Alan Curtis, we're now seeing a letter written by his ex-wife, and now Alan is an openly gay man. And at this time, this is 1983. Sherry, who was the ex-wife's name, had just visited him. He had taken her to the Tower Club in Tampa. She wanted to thank him for all the time that they had spent together. He was living in Florida, and he moved to Wilton Manors, or moved to Fort Lauderdale, and for many years he had a very successful card business. He had Alan's Hallmark cards in Wilton Manor. Some of you may remember that. And he was an early AIDS activist and very involved in the community. So Florida-born Alan Curtis was a fixture in the Fort Lauderdale area and a longtime owner and operator of Alan's Hallmark shop in Wilton Manors. An early AIDS activist and caregiver, he had a long history of involvement with civic and community organizations. Not unlike many other gay men of his generation, Curtis was married to a woman for some period of time. That marriage ended in divorce and without children, but a lifelong friendship ensued. Here we see Curtis's ex-wife, Sherry, in a letter dated December 14, 1983. It is clear from the context of the letter that Sherry had stayed with him for a week, most likely when he was living in Tampa. Curtis treated his ex-wife to a fancy dinner at the now defunct Tower Club in Tampa, brought her numerous presents, introduced her to his circle of friends, and even treated her to a reflexology session and manicure. In the note, after thanking her ex-husband for his generosity during their visit, Sherry writes, "Thank you for your love and your concern for me, which you demonstrated throughout the week, even at times when you were physically exhausted and emotionally drained." The depth of the relationship between these two ex-spouses can be seen in the note right here, which Alan Curtis left, which was attached to the letter from Sherry. And it says, "And from my combination best friend, former wife, helpmate, spiritual sister, and confidant, Sherry." Moving on to another story here. Here we have the story of John Payne. And John grew up in North Carolina, and he spent a lot of his adult life in San Francisco. So what you see here are 3 pages of a letter to his parents. And down below here is a letter that his mother wrote shortly after his death to her friends. John grew up in North Carolina and graduated from Wake Forest University in 1978, would make him about my age if he were alive today, probably in his mid-60s. He worked as an actor, stage manager, director, and publicist for a number of theater companies. Additionally, he taught theater arts at City College of San Francisco. Living in San Francisco as a young man, Payne wrote this letter in 1988 addressed to his parental units. Payne acknowledged his illness in a particularly difficult moment in the AIDS pandemic. You see, John passed away from AIDS in 1993. It was a time in the AIDS pandemic as gay men were sick and dying all around him with no treatment or cure in sight. Having already suffered the results of many illnesses associated with AIDS at the time of this letter, he expressed his love and appreciation to his parents. In the letter, he writes, "Speaking of my hump, I want you to know how keenly aware I am of the support and how much I appreciate it. Since the onset of my illness, I've tried even harder than usual to live life to its fullest. When I take a chance and fail, you're always there to pick up the pieces. Without you, I couldn't dare to do some of the things I do. It doesn't seem fair that you always get stuck with me when I'm crippled or sick. And then when I'm doing well, you don't see me. You never complain. You never tell me not to try to do too much, even though you often end up paying the price. I want you to know that I don't take that for granted." In his unpublished memoir, which he left behind, John wrote of his father, "My dad is a big man, strong, gentle, and loving. When I was a kid, I used to think he knew everything. Now that I'm an adult, I'm sure of it. He always seemed to love having me around and wanted to take me everywhere with him." Payne died in 1993 at age 38. Upon his death, many of his papers were assembled by his mother, and they were donated here to Stonewall Archives. John's sister, unfortunately, died of AIDS 2 months later. Penning a letter to her friends and family members in the fall of 1994, their mother wrote about the experience of losing both of her 2 adult children to AIDS, and that's in this letter here. In part, she writes, "It seemed impossible that our charming, witty, vivacious children became racked with pain and endured one major illness after another. From the moment I opened my eyes each morning, I hoped I only had a nightmare, but stark reality was always there. John Jr. told his dad that the worst thing about his illness was knowing he won't be there for us as we grow older and needed him. The 4 of us were always very close, but our common enemy, AIDS, gave us a bond beyond belief." Let's move around the corner here. Some of these stories, of course, are quite intense and quite heavy. Here we have another correspondent in prison. This letter was written by Greg Thomas, known as inmate number 081916. Here we see 3 pages of the letter here, and it's dated March 31st, 1986, and he actually wrote it at 2 different times. The first 2.5 pages are in red, and then the bottom part is in blue here. Greg wrote this letter to Joel Starkey, who was the founder of the Southern Gay Archives. We have many of his papers here at Stonewall. He was a publisher and advocate, socialist, and a defender of many individual rights. Joel Starkey also corresponded with many gay men who were incarcerated. On display, we see this letter from March 1986 to Starkey from Greg Thomas, written during Thomas's incarceration at the Cross City Correctional Institute in Cross City, Florida. The facility, built in 1972 on the site of a former Air Force base, is still in operation today as a minimum, maximum, and medium security prison for adult males. At this time, we are unaware of the crime for which Thomas was incarcerated. The letter was written 2 months into Thomas's incarceration. Other than what we see here, little is known of the relationship. While there is some discussion in the letter of a release and a hospital stay, if Thomas served the entire 86-month sentence that he references in his letter, he would have been released 2 years after Starkey's death. The intimate nature, however, of the relationship between the 2 individuals is revealed in the following passages. "By now," this is Greg Thomas writing to Starkey, "by now you should have received all of my letters telling you how to send it," and the "it" being a package of new underwear, new jockey briefs that he was wanting, a package of new underwear, etc. "Also, put those jockeys on your sweet bod and wear each pair around for a few minutes before you send them. It sure would raise the sentimental value to me, plus give me many pleasures in J.O. I love you. I just glanced over the solo flight article you sent. It's got me horny, so I'm going to stop for now and finish the article and thinking sweet thoughts of you. So excited about your receiving my package. It's like Christmas. Thank you, baby. Greggy loves you. Bye-bye, baby. I love you, Greg. XO, 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 X. Here we have a single letter, although we have many other letters from these 2 individuals. This is from Don Croxton to Doug Pugh, and Doug Pugh was an attorney. These gentlemen were from St. Louis. They've been together for many years. They live here in Florida, and they met in 1969. They got married in Toronto when it first became legal for them to become married, and then they got married in the United States in Provincetown, I believe. And they've been very supportive of many philanthropic organizations and really use their time and resources to be able to help them. Don is a ceramic artist, and as I said, Doug is an attorney. Don spent some time. I'll make sure I have this right. Don spent Don spent some time, sorry, in the service, and he was stationed, well, let me go through this script here. I'm going to make it much easier rather than ad-libbing this to get this correctly. Doug attended Washington University in St. Louis, and then he served in the Peace Corps in Western Samoa in 1967. Professionally, as I said, he worked as an attorney and has had a long career of nonprofit leadership. Croxton served in the military during the Vietnam War and also worked as a ceramic artist. They met in a gay bar in St. Louis with a backdoor alley, and shortly thereafter they made a trip to New York and wandered into St. Patrick's Cathedral, and there in a private moment the two men promised to spend their lives together. In 1971, 3 years after their first encounter, they were physically separated as Don was stationed at the Naval Air Station in Lemoore, California. Now here you see in the letter how they shared the details of their separation. In this letter, topics range from the effects of a particular quick tanning lotion to necessary car repairs and even setting up an apartment together in St. Louis. A lot of the mundane things of life, but very important to share those particular facts, particularly in a new relationship like this. In the letter, Don Croxton writes of their relationship, "Oh, Doug, will the 27th ever come? I need you so much. I can hardly think of anything else lately. I have to hold you, be with you, and bear you. I'm starving and suffocating because I have to breathe you in and taste you. We've been much too long without each other." We'll move on to one more here. And these are 3 pages from a scrapbook. Scrapbook has about, this particular scrapbook has, I would say, probably about 45 or 50 pages of it. And this is the scrapbook of Kurt Mann. Kurt Mann spent 4 years as a female impersonator, often in the character of Phyllis Diller. Mann remembers his first seeing a drag show. He grew up in Long Island and first seeing a drag show in the Apollo Theater on 125th Street in Harlem, New York City. Having grown up in Long Island, he writes, "The first time I saw the Jewel Box Review was in January 1967. A friend drove us into Manhattan to the Apollo Theater. I was a bit nervous going into Harlem needlessly, as it turned out. I was most impressed with the caliber of the show. It was huge and colorful, a spectacular display of beads and feathers." The Jewel Box Review, for those of you who don't know, was a touring company of female impersonators that started in 1939 and attracted large, often gay audiences from around the country. In 1968, when Kurt was 21, he made his first appearance at the Apollo Theater. Now here, I am going to bring you up here, because here, I hope you can see, are telegrams, original telegrams from his mother and his grandmother and grandfather, congratulating him on his drag performances as part of the Jewel Box Review. In these telegrams, we see, first of all, "Good luck on your first New York opening. Wish we could be there. Break a leg. With love from your Queens Village Sands Club, Mom, Tom, Lorraine, Wayne, and Peter." His maternal grandparents also wrote in their telegram, "Congratulations on a wonderful show. Well done, variety building and rave notice. Terrific. All our love, Mim and Wardy." Now again, remember, we're 1968, and he's doing his first female impression show at a Jewel Box Review, and his mother and his grandparents are sending out their love to him and congratulating him on the work that he is doing. A few of the telegrams here. His mom, the next month, he appeared at the Howard Theater in Washington, D.C. In the Jewel Box Review, and his mother wrote in another telegram to him, "And they thought Nixon was going to take Washington. Have a happy darling. Love, Mom." And finally, we have one more telegram from his grandparents. Hi, Kurt, congratulations and best wishes for your new success. With all our love, Mim and Wordy. And finally, we thought that we would throw in a few things because sometimes these private messages that we've been seeing here, we've been seeing messages between an ex-wife and ex-husband. We've seen a letter between two friends discussing the emotional trauma of one of their partners. We've seen a letter between a child and his parents, a letter between a parent discussing the trauma of having lost two children to AIDS. We've seen correspondence from people in prison and between a parent and child and grandparents, a child, everything acknowledging and accepting the relationship between these LGBTQ people. But all of those correspondences were meant to be private. And so sometimes we have to recognize that there is correspondence between people that is out in the public and is so public, in one of the most public places, that it's so public, it's still private. So we took a look at some of the old classified sections from some of the old LGBTQ publications. And here you see an issue of On Our Backs, here you see an issue of The Advocate, and here you see an issue of The Frontier. I'm coming back, folks, don't worry. Hi, folks. Sorry about that. A phone came through on my computer. Technology, what can you say? What I was saying is here we have an issue from On Our Backs. Here we have an issue of Frontiers, and here is an issue of The Advocate. Now, many of you who know the classified sections know that a lot of those were just men seeking men or women seeking women, and they tend to be just things thrown out into the public like that in the classified sections of these. But you would occasionally see notes that were intentionally written to one person out there. So the first one we're going to look at is up here in The Advocate. And there's a small ad right here that reads as follows. This is The Advocate from January 7th, 1986 on page 92. The ad here says, Eddie, where are you? On Saturday, November 16th at the Park Bar in Roanoke, Virginia, I met the most intriguing, fascinating, and attractive young man ever. You said your name was Eddie. I gave you an orange 76 business card with a number on it. You didn't call, and I'm hoping you lost the card. Eddie, I believe in going with my feelings, and you made me feel like a high school student asking out his first date. There's an address below to write to me. Please mention something about my attire that night so I know it's you. Eddie, if you're still interested, as you led me to believe then, please write and I'll call you. Please. Thanks, Kate, JD. Below here in Frontiers, primarily a California-based magazine. The Advocate, by the way, was mostly a national magazine. Here we have a very, very tiny little ad which shows up right here. Peter, thanks for the letter. Love to meet you. Van Nuys on Monday does not work. Saturday, Santa Monica, Al. And finally here On Our Backs, entertainment calls itself Entertainment for the Adventurous Lesbian. And by the way, they do have a little promotional ad here, which I think is really great. It says, please cancel my ad. I'm having all the sex I can handle. So I think that's very good. That's a very good ad, a very good promotion for their classifieds. But my eye was caught down to this one little article, this one little ad right here. The headline is, "Be my teacher. Connie, I'm willing to be your student if you're ready to give me my first lesson." So these stories are better or worse than what any of us might know, gay or straight or queer or trans or lesbians. But for me, they represent a way in which this community, our community, has at times expressed itself. It's very sweet to see some of the very poignant comments that they've made, and as well as to actually see the individual letters themselves and the original letters that you see here. So let me just kind of move you around here. And I'd be happy if anybody has any questions or comments or thoughts that they would like to give. Just throw them up in the chat or in the Q&A, and we can all see them and chat about them. All right. Well, if that's the case, then let me just say that we will make this tape available on the website, and also it will be posted on Facebook as well too. So I want to thank everybody for being here. Be sure to visit stonewall-museum.org. It's a great way for you to contribute to us as well, and so we'd appreciate any support that you can get. That's it. So be sure you sign up. And yes, the question was asked, is it possible to see all of these digitally? Absolutely. All of these have been scanned in, and there will be a virtual exhibition on our website. Give us about a week to get all that done. But all the text that you just heard here, as well as the images, will all be available online. Sure, happy to help out. So thank you, everybody. Have a great weekend. Stay safe out there, and until the next time. So long. Bye.